Okay, we're going to be talking about environmental issues, especially as they relate to Oklahoma and tribal communities. So I'll go ahead and start off with Paulette, and you do most of your work in the environment. I was wondering if you could maybe talk a little bit about the work that you've done at the South Central Climate Center, Science Center here in Oklahoma.
Ho'esiwapani. I'm a member of the Absentee Shawnee tribe, and I graduate from Haskell Indian Nations University. And I was recruited to the OU by Renee McPherson from an undergraduate project I got involved with through an internship with the Haskell Environmental Research Studies Institute. I was originally interested in law, and through this internship I was introduced to environmental policy and issues with environment. And I put on, with the help of the Weather Center, Oklahoma Climatological Survey, and the Southern Climate Impact Planning Program, in December 2011, we put on the first intertribal meeting on climate variability and change here at the Weather Center. When we had the intertribal workshop, 22 tribes from around Oklahoma came together and for the first time talked about climate. And I was introduced to people like Renee McPherson, who was the state climatologist and part of the Oklahoma Climatological Survey, who recruited me to OU as a graduate student into the Department of Geography and Environmental Sustainability. So as I came here, the project that came out of, some of the information that came out of the intertribal workshop was that tribes wanted more information on how climate was impacting them locally instead of so regionally, because Oklahoma is so diverse and we all know that. And so there was a grant written with me in mind to continue these dialogues, these collaborations between science and tribes. And we were really fortunate at the time of that particular 2011 workshop, because the National Climate Assessment was being developed, and for the first time the tribes had a voice in that document, that article of science. And the report that came out of that particular workshop went into that, was cited in that climate assessment. So for the first time, tribes are having a voice in this global issue of climate change. So we decided this grant that was developed created for this continued dialogue between tribes and the scientists on climate change was, the idea was to have 6 intertribal workshops, 4 in Oklahoma and 2 in New Mexico, to bring to the tribes the science and to hear and listen to what the tribes had to say their issues were. So it was pretty exciting to be part of that project. We ended up having 5 instead of 6, because 2 in New Mexico was a little excessive, being that we had not quite introduced ourselves as the Science Institute to the tribes in New Mexico. So we did it more culturally appropriate and asked them what they wanted and how they would have ran a particular meeting, which was a struggle sometimes with the science to try to hear what I was trying to explain to them, that there are culturally appropriate ways you approach tribes and you ask for permission to be in their place and to do things with them in their place. So the results that came out of that were really exciting. We had a couple of different perspectives to it. The first half of the workshop revolved around the science, and we introduced some of the tools that the Climate Science Center and the Southern Impact Planning Program have developed that are available online free, and had a tutorial with the tribal members that were there. And then the second half was talking about participatory video and how video can be used as a tool to document not only environmental transformation but historical preservation, to talk about stories of the past weather events and extremes and climatic changes and the changes seen in the lifetime of one particular elder. And the results and the stories that have come out have been amazing. And so we've not only completed these 5 workshops, and out of the 63 tribes in the region, we had participation from 33 of them, which is a little over 50% still, which is good. So there were 65 participants, 37 sat down for interviews, video interviews, and talked about what climate change meant to them, how they identify climate change, the observations of climate change that they recognize, or that the changes that they're attributing to climate change, and the different animal, plant, and weather patterns that they have seen change. And it's been really amazing and overwhelming. And so we have so much information that we've decided to do a short documentary and try to submit something to Sundance Film Festival to have the people that have stories tell it in their own voice, so that we're not coming in trying to tell someone else someone else's story. So it's been a pretty amazing project.
That does sound wonderful. And so it sounds like these projects really reflect the community voice, that you're using new tools and media to get those, to share those voices. How do you plan to implement, say, indigenous indigenous worldviews with some of the, I don't know, state, federal, global initiatives? How do they sort of fit in together?
Part of the purpose of introducing some of these science tools to the tribes is so that they can make decisions that are culturally appropriate and relevant to themselves, using the tools on their own terms. So that it's a strengthening of sovereignty to be able to decide how they're going to deal with climate change in every aspect of their life, because it does impact every area. It impacts health, it impacts policy, it impacts infrastructure, it impacts housing, it impacts every aspect of our life, how we culturally deal with our environment and our relationship to place. So it's really a strengthening of sovereignty to be able to make those decisions and to be empowered with the knowledge from our traditional knowledge blended with this modern technology. So it's really a hybrid, a collaboration of knowledge, which is nothing but the best. We're going to need it.
Right. Okay. So with this information, I'm wondering how do you find this sort of report feeding back into and empowering tribal communities?
The National Assessment Report? First of all, it gives voice to marginalized and silenced voices. Tribes have been silenced for 500 years. And to have the opportunity to address science with native science, saying that we have lived in space forever and we have relationship and observations of place. So we have something to contribute as well. Don't negate our story. And science is finally at a point to where it's realized its hubris is beyond its capabilities of producing answers. And so it's come to tribes with humility and asked for contribution to the dialogue of science and climate.
Wado for your discussion about the environment in Oklahoma.